What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new video, and in today's video we are going to be ranking my top 10 favorite films from 2025. Obviously, it is now officially 2026. If you guys remember, for 2024, I ranked every film I had seen from that year, because I had only seen about 7. This year was a lot more. I saw about 30 films this year. And I wasn't going to do a 30 film ranking, so I'm going to do my top 10 from my least favorite to my favorite. I also do want to say this list is based on my enjoyment of the films and how much I enjoyed them and liked them. It is not based on what I think the quality of the films are. So you could have, like, obviously these movies didn't come out this year, but you can have, like, The Dark Knight versus, like, Elf. Obviously The Dark Knight's a way better movie than Elf, but I may have Elf a little higher because it's one of my favorite. Like, just an example like that. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, we have Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. I thought this was a fantastic film for someone who has never seen anything to do with the Universal monsters whatsoever. I thought this was a really, really great way to bring Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster to life in a more updated version. This movie was a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 for me. This movie I thought was incredible. Like I said earlier, there are some movies that are a little higher on this list that I maybe enjoyed more, but quality-wise, this was a 10 out of 10 film. I loved everything about this movie. I mean, Oscar Isaac's performance as Dr. Frankenstein was just incredible. He's this greedy, selfish, kind of just crazy scientist who will do anything for himself. He is a real piece of shit guy. And then Jacob Elordi as the monster was such a great job. He did such a good job at making this character seem so vulnerable. This person we know is this big fucking scary monster. They made him so vulnerable, and you feel for him, and he's got so much like life to him. Just with even the expressiveness in his eyes and the way he talks, and his design is just fucking awesome. You know, the cinematography in this movie was gorgeous, and the way the story was written, you know, it's such a tragic tale, and it's told from two different sides. You have the professor's side, and you have the monster side, and you know, each side kind of leans more towards their character and kind of has a bias to their character, and it just all comes together and creates this really beautiful film that I thought was just incredible. And quality wise, one of the best films of the year, man. This film was great. If you have not seen it, I definitely do recommend it. Coming in at number 9, we have The Running Man. Now, I know this was a bit of a controversial movie. It didn't have the highest ratings in the world. I actually had a very, very good time with this film. I thought it was a very fun movie, and I thought it was actually fantastic up until maybe the last 20 minutes. I talked about this in my review of the film, but it's a very fun plot based off of the Stephen King book, and it does something drastically different than what the original film did, which in itself was drastically different from the novel. This pays more homage and is closer to what the novel actually was. You know, Glenn Powell as Ben Richards is just this fun action star. You know, that's what Glenn Powell is. He is just this larger than life action star, and he's great at it. He's great at those characters, and you know, he provides such a fun performance, and he's got so many funny one-liners, and you know, he's again just a larger than life individual. And you know, he's put in this, you know, plot where he's got to essentially move across country. Very Last of Us style. This gave me a lot of Last of Us vibes. You guys know I'm a big Last of Us fan. It feels like there was a lot of influence there. How he was jumping from city to city, meeting all these new people. I mean, he literally meets two African-American brothers who almost felt exactly like Henry and Sam from Last of Us. It was just a great movie. I very much so enjoyed it. Again, up until the final 20 minutes, I thought the plot got a little too convenient. I thought the ending was very messy. I thought, you know, the whole thing with Josh Brolin's character being able to control everything, I thought it got, again, way too convenient for the plot, and they were using that as a way to carry them through a story instead of actually, you know, doing good writing there at the end. But seriously, though, aside from that, though, the action was fantastic, which is what I was really looking for. So many great sequences, the apartment sequence, you know, the plane sequence. It's just such cool stuff. Very fun movie. Had a fantastic time with this one. Coming in at number 8, we have Fantastic Four: First Steps. This was a pretty decent film, man. I thought they did a pretty good job bringing the Fantastic Four back to the big screen after the absolute shit show that was the 2015 Fan Four Stick film, and then the two before that, which were also, let's be honest, early 2000s, just cheese and corniness. And I thought this film did a really good job. I thought the casting was fantastic. I love Pedro Pascal. He does a great job. Vanessa Kirby is incredible. Joseph Coyne as Johnny Storm. Just a great cast. A beautiful looking film. One of the most beautiful films of the year. You know, that 1960s aesthetic was beautiful looking. Julia Gardner as Silver Surfer. You know, Galactus, like, there's so much to love about this film. You know, Galactus looks incredible. Silver Surfer looks incredible. The space sequence scene where they got to go through and get around the star, which is a black hole, was such a beautiful, beautiful scene. You know, I really did enjoy this movie. Again, kind of up until the ending, I thought they fumbled the ending completely. I thought the way they beat Galactus was very repetitive. We had seen it so many times in the comics, and we literally saw it in Fortnite, how they kind of just push him through a rift. And then you have Silver Surfer disappear for like 20 minutes, and then she randomly shows back up at the end and makes like a sacrifice play. The typical cliche of, like, they do it with Vanessa Kirby's character in this, where you think she's dead, Sue Storm, and then randomly it's like, oh my god, she's dead, and then something happens where they bring her back to life. It very, tropey. Like, it's we've seen it so many times. Mr. Fantastic getting stretched by Galactus, but he's like, he could barely stretch. It's like certain things like that. It's just, I think they really fumbled the ending, and there could have been a bit more action. It was, for an action movie, it was a little on the drier end. But I still think overall, though, really enjoyed this film. I thought it was really good. This is better than 90% of the shit that Marvel's put out after Endgame, because I am not a fan of what Marvel's been doing after Endgame, to say the least. I think they have just completely, just flushed their universe down the toilet. But this was a very good back to form, especially after Thunderbolts, which I did not find very good. Coming in at number 7, we have F1. Now, this is a movie I did not see up until a week or two ago. It was in the theater for a while. I just never got around to seeing it. There's a friend of mine who really suggested I'd see this film, and I was waiting for it to be free because I was not paying $20 to see a film. And yeah, it lived up, man. It really did live up. It was a very enjoyable film. It felt like Rocky meets Top Gun meets Ford versus Ferrari, and you blend those together, and F1 is what comes out of it. Brad Pitt is such a fun actor. He's got so much range, and he can go from being such a funny, hysterical, larger than life character to this dramatic, intense actor, and it's so fun to see his range. You mix that in with this young buck, Damson Idris, and their chemistry is just so good, but so is their rivalry and the constant bickering they have. It never feels dried up. It never gets annoying. It just feels like an appropriate rivalry. Again, it's the old buck versus the young buck, and they're both so stubborn, and they both, want to do it their way all the time. The cinematography in this film was fucking incredible. The racing scenes were just out of this world. Again, it was like Top Gun Maverick. You really felt like you were there. They did a fantastic job with that. The story wasn't as predictable as I was picturing it being. I was like, okay, it's, old guy comes in, he shows the new kid, how to really race, and he helps teach him, the new kid, and then the new kid goes on to win the entire race. Not like that at all. This really wasn't about the new kid. It was more about Brad Pitt's character. Again, I thought he was just coming in to put Damson Idris out there. But nope, this was about his victory and reclaiming his glory and winning what he never ended up winning, back in his glory days. So this was a very enjoyable film. I think my only complaint with this movie was that they didn't spend more time focusing on Brad Pitt and Damson Idris' relationship. I thought, it kind of felt a little... it was like 1 second they were friends, the next second they were fighting, 1 second they were fighting. It didn't feel natural to me. It just felt like constant bickering, and every time they came to a center point, they kind of just drifted away again. But aside from that, man, perfect film. Very good movie. Coming in at number 6, we have the brand new Silent Night, Deadly Night. I was so pleasantly surprised with this movie because I am a pretty big fan of the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. That's one I've been watching as a kid, and like I said, as slashers go, Because obviously slashers aren't, they're never really that good of films, like in the writing department, if whatever. But as a slasher movie goes, this was one of the best of the decade. I think this, Scream 6, and Halloween Kills were probably the three best slashers of the decade. I know people really like Black Phone. I wasn't too big into that. I haven't seen the second one yet. I know people like the Terrifiers. Those are terrible. I'm sorry. We haven't gotten any of the It's this decade. Those were both in the 2017 and 19. So it's been kind of dried up in the slasher department. And I know Halloween Kills and Scream 6 have their issues. And so does this movie, but really, a stellar slasher, man. I thought they took what the original did and just made it even better. They expanded on Billy Chapman as a character. He's no longer just this evil Santa who's just irredeemable. He has a conscience, and he's got personality to him, and we're following him. We're following him through the story, and he's our protagonist. Again, the inner voice, I thought was such a great idea. The love interest, she was so good in this movie, and it made for such a fun slasher, but it felt fresh. It felt like something just different enough to where it was enjoyable. It was so fun. Some great sequences. Obviously, the party sequence where he goes in and kills all the Nazis. Again, that ending sequence was one of the best sequences I've ever seen in a slasher, where the voice in his head is directing him through the ball pit, and it tells him where the actual killer has the girl. I did not like the reveal at the end of who the killer was. I thought it was just like, who? But aside from that, man, this was a really, really good slasher, and I was pleasantly surprised with this one. And now breaking into the top 5, we have Roofman. This is another one that I actually saw the same day I saw F1. And wow, man, this movie was fucking fantastic. I actually thought it was perfect. Literally a perfect movie for what it was trying to do. And really, it's just based on a real-life tale of this guy who was a robber because he couldn't get his shit together, and he couldn't find his purpose in the real world. And, he got arrested, broke out of prison, and started hiding in Toys R Us's, or in a Toys R Us. And they nailed it, That Channing Tatum is as funny as ever, Again, a lot of range, man. He had some really great moments in this film of just being this larger-than-life, like, action star and just hysterical like he always is in his comedies, to, again, these dramatic, emotional scenes, and he's great. Kirsten Dunst as the love interest, I thought was very, very good. She was pretty likable. And just the concept in general was just so fun. And it was just so intriguing watching this dude just fucking hide in a Toys R Us. I loved it. I really, really loved it. It was so fun. And the entire movie, I just had this large grin across my face. And it was just one of those movies that it was so different, and you didn't feel any... There was no weight that came with it. It was just, you could just sit back, relax, and enjoy yourself. It was one of those movies where you could unplug your brain and just have a good time. And I really, really loved it for that. But at the same time, had some emotional weight to it. It was perfect for what it was trying to be. It nailed it in every single department. And I loved it. I loved this movie. And it will go down as one of my favorite movies. Now, mind you, my list of favorite movies is in the hundreds. But still, it's a very, very, very enjoyable film. And again, another one of those ones that I saw the trailer for it, and I knew instantly I wanted to see it, and it lived up to it for me, man. Very, very good movie. Now coming in at number 4, and this is going to be a very hot take, we have Captain America: Brave New World. Now, I'm as shocked as you guys are. Now, I know this was not a very well-received movie. And to this day, almost a year later, I still don't really know why. I thought this movie was super fun. I thought it was a really good, grounded superhero film. I understand what's the people's issues with the main bad guy, the Thinker. He was a bit of a letdown, and the writing couldn't keep up with, the writing wasn't smart enough to accompany how smart the character was supposed to be. But man, I think if they just didn't market Red Hulk as much as they did, if they didn't even reveal him at all in this movie, I think people would have liked it a lot more, because that was another big problem people had, is that the lack of Red Hulk in this movie. But I didn't look at it that way. I looked at the Thinker being the main bad guy, and Red Hulk was just a giant treat at the end of the road of this movie. You know, I think it was just a treat. It's like, congratulations, you got through the movie. Here's your reward, and it's Red Hulk. And the ending fight scene's great. It's so fun. You know, I think the action sequences in this movie are great. The scene over the Indian, I think it was the Indian Ocean, I think that's what it was one of my favorite sequences this year. It was so badass watching Falcon and Captain America fly over the river, landing on missiles, dodging jets. It was like a fucking Top Gun sequence. It was fucking awesome. And it was this big mystery of trying to figure out who the Thinker is, and you know, it's callbacks to the 2008 Hulk movie, which I watched as a kid, and it's not a very good movie, but seeing that tie back into it, it was a great fucking movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was better than Fantastic Four, and I thought it was better than Thunderbolts. And I know, again, hot take, but I really liked this movie, man. I really did. I thought it was very, very fun. And this might actually be my favorite Captain America movie. I see, because I don't really count Civil War as a Captain America movie. To me, that's like Avengers 2.5. But if you want to count that, that's my favorite. But if you're counting the solo Captain America movies, Brave New World's my favorite. You know, I'm not very big on the first Captain America, and I'm not very big on the second one. I think they're both overrated. But this one, man, hit the cake for me, man. This was it. This was a very, very good movie. I enjoyed this one a lot. And coming in at number 3, we had Sinners. What a pleasant surprise this was from director Ryan Coogler and actor Michael B. Jordan. Two of my favorite, actor-director duos of the last decade. You know, obviously they did Creed together, which is still one of the greatest movies of all time, in my opinion. Then they did Black Panther, which is one of the best comic book movies of all time. And, you know, now they're doing Sinners, which is arguably, again, another one of the greatest movies of all time. This is a fucking masterpiece of a film. You know, I've never seen a movie blend so many different genres together. You know, again, it's a period piece. It's a musical. It's a horror movie. It's a drama. It's a comedy. It's everything. It's the whole package blended together in such a seamless way. It didn't feel duct taped together. It didn't feel cheap. It was just natural. The performances were fucking out of this world. You know, Michael B. Jordan playing, twins was just incredible. You know, this was just a phenomenal film. It was beautiful. The cinematography was gorgeous. The soundtrack was fucking amazing. Everything about this movie was great. Just everything. If I had my only slight gripe is that I think at the end it got a little bit, I don't want to say cheesy, but a little cheesy. I guess that's a good word to use, cheesy. Just with the part where he kind of, the bad guy turns into a fire tornado at the end. I thought that was a little weird. But aside from that, man, this really was a perfect film from start to finish. Coming in at number 2, and yes, I am biased because this was pretty much my favorite show of all time. But we have Stranger Things, the finale. Yeah, I know. I did just do a review on this. I'm not really going to go too in-depth with it. You guys know my issues. Not enough characters died. Wasn't a fan of what they did with Eleven's story. The fight scenes weren't dragged out long enough. They were too quick, too short. They didn't discuss enough of Henry's backstory and with the flashbacks and the whole thing with the play. Linda Hamilton was completely wasted. The whole military plotline makes no sense. I still really love the action scenes for what we got. The entire 40-minute epilogue that we got was fucking incredible. The soundtrack was pretty bad. And like I said, I'm half and half on this movie. I gave it a 3.5 on Letterboxd, so it's not all bad. But like I said, overall, I'm like kind of still mixed on it. But coming in at number 1, and of course, the best movie of the year was Superman 2025 by James Gunn. It's a perfect movie on every sense of the word. It's just a perfect film. The adaptation of Superman was perfect. The story I thought was perfect. The performances were perfect. The soundtracks were perfect. It was a stellar film. It was incredible. I loved this movie to death. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is a top 5 comic book movie of all time, in my opinion. It's a masterpiece. I literally have a poster of it on my wall. Nothing more needs to be said. I'm not going to go too in depth into it because you guys already know how I feel. So yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this ranking. If you have a different ranking, go ahead and join me down in the comments below and tell me what your ranking is. Make sure to drop a like, rate, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.